Let's talk about buying systems for fixed pricing. Ordering a system based on fixed pricing. In other words, specifying a price, giving a bunch of programmers or a company a specification, and then assuming that they will deliver based on that specification. In other words, buying a system based on fixed price. As opposed to, of course, flexible pricing, or I'm not sure what the English term is, but perhaps running pricing, right? Where you have, for example, a bunch of programmers and an hourly salary, and then you just keep on working and you pay the programmers by the hour. If you've been watching my videos, I assume you would guess that I'm opposing fixed pricing, which is true and which is why I'm making this video. My argument is this. If you are building an E-type system, we'll talk about what this is. If you are building or ordering an E-type system, then assuming that you can specify the system to such an extent that somebody can deliver the system you actually want based on that specification is fundamentally unreasonable. Let me elaborate. If you haven't watched my other video on E-type, P-type and S-type systems, be sure to check that out, it's in the description. But here's the crash course version. These are concepts developed by a guy called Lehman. And essentially they describe three types of systems, three categories of systems, three types of systems with fundamentally different characteristics. Just to give you the extremes, S-type systems are systems where you can fully specify the problem and the solution. Trivially, this would be sorting algorithms, for example, or mathematical problems, well understood mathematical problems. Obviously, you can probably see that most of the systems we have in daily life are not S-type systems. Rather, on the other end of the spectrum, they are E-type systems. E-type systems are systems that are fundamentally subject to change. They are systems that solve real-world problems in real-world settings. The point being that in these systems, we don't actually always know exactly what it is we want. We don't actually know exactly what problem we are solving, which I would argue is why we have, for example, agile methodologies. They are trying to solve this problem of not knowing exactly what problem we are trying to solve. This is why we have iterative development. So what I want to say is that if you're building an E-type system, then that system is by definition fundamentally subject to change. And if it's fundamentally subject to change, then by definition you can't specify every necessary detail of the system. Because in some sense you don't necessarily know exactly what system you're intending to build. You don't necessarily know where you want to go with the system. And as I emphasized in that video, that's a good thing. Not knowing where we're going is not necessarily a problem. Not knowing where we're going becomes a problem if you're trying to enforce having to know where we're going. It feels kind of oxymoronish, but if you think about it, it's as if we have to let go of control in order to regain control. It's as if we have to let go of the idea that we can control all of the details in order to regain control of all of the details. But let me be less fuzzy, let's talk more concrete. What I mean is that fixed pricing assumes that you can specify the system. And if you can't, but you still work on fixed pricing, there are numerous potential outcomes, but none of these outcomes are good. Of course, you may actually succeed, you may be lucky, or you may have successfully gathered all of your requirements and your idea of what you wanted the system to do turns out to be correct. Of course, that's a possibility and that's a good possibility. But there are a number of other possibilities. For one, you could have misstated your requirements. You specified the system in a way that you thought was correct, but it turns out it was incorrect. Or it turns out that there's another spin, another pivot that you would want to do, where the system would be more valuable, but that's outside of your contract. It could be that you've specified it correctly, but you end up in a contractual argument with the people building your system, or vice versa. If you are the people building the system, you end up in a contractual conflict with the customer about your understanding of the requirements, right? It might be that one party thinks that they meant one thing, but the other party thinks that the requirement mean a totally different thing. And if you think about the Agile Manifesto, this is where the Agile Manifesto says that you should favor customer collaboration over contractual negotiation. So again, these outcomes are of course unwanted. So what should we do instead? I mean, I understand that it's not a novel proposal to say that we should avoid fixed pricing and instead pay programmers by the hour. But the reason I'm highlighting this discussion is that to my understanding, when I talk to people in industry, it seems that still we have a lot of fixed priced systems in the workings. there are a lot of projects that are carried out under the mantle of fixed pricing. And to me, this sounds like a pending problem. This sounds like a very dangerous situation for these projects to be in. So as I see it, there are two alternatives. Either you pay programmers, or you as a programmer, or you as a company with programmers are being paid on an hourly basis, or more generally, of course, on a time-based basis. You are paid not per performance, but based on time, right? So you execute requirements and you constantly meet with clients, right? Think agile, and you are paid continuously. Whenever the customer wants to exit the project, they exit the project, and that's that. No need to worry about contractual negotiation, and no need to reach further agreements. The other alternative number 2, if you definitely need to work with fixed pricing, which I can totally understand, then you should see that price as a price roof. You should say that, okay, we work on an hourly basis. We charge you on a time-based basis. We have a price roof. We can work up to this point, and we can even say, we don't even have to see it as a price roof. We could even say that you've ordered the system and we'll work towards this price, but whenever we're at this price, we'll stop working on the system, which puts pressure on everyone to constantly reprioritize whatever is in the backlog, the feature backlog. So instead of saying that, okay, now you've fulfilled all of the requirements that were in the original specification, we constantly work with reprioritizing the items in the backlog and continuously build the system. And if you have a look at my other video where I talk about a great image depicting MVP, minimum viable product, you can of course also see that what becomes very important when you work like this is that you are not building isolated functionality, but rather that you are, as in Scrum, for example, building shippable versions continuously, so that at whatever point when the client decides to exit the project, or whenever you hit that price roof, that when you reach that point, it's not like you don't have a functional system. When you reach that point, rather, you should have a functioning version. It's just a question of what features are in the version and what features are still in the backlog. So to me, this doesn't seem outrageous at all. Actually, it seems rather natural. So essentially, to sum up what I'm saying is that never work on fixed pricing unless you treat the fixed price as a maximum spendable amount, as a price roof, or as a target price, and then you charge based on time. The point is essentially that it's not good for any of the parties involved to work on a fixed price basis. If you get into a contractual disagreement, it's not good for any of the parties involved. I think we inevitably have to consider it somewhat of a failure. Unless, of course, you're a hard-necked bastard who don't care about your clients, but that's another story. So software development should always be paid for on a time-based basis, period. If we are talking about E-type systems, of course. S-type systems, a whole different story. That's it. Thanks for watching. If you disagree, feel absolutely free to argue your position in the comments. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.